Yo guys, welcome to this week's trade recap where I'm gonna go over my trades that I took this week, some losses that we took this week, what my draw was, and an analysis for the next week. So let's get into it. So we'll start off with what my draw was for the week overall. So for the weekly chart, that was last week. So this week we're in a bearish gap. Now for me, if we move over to the daily chart, this was where more my bias was formed. So last week we had I had long bias as we hit that weekly gap right here. So last week we hit that. Now I actually thought we were going to come down to this daily imbalance because where I set my draw, I usually use a lot of internal to external, external to internal draw and liquidity. So once we took this high, so this was our previous range, daily dealing range. So we had this swing low to swing high, so that's a dealing range right there. So we obviously hit the internal going to external. So once we exited that range, which was on this high here, we've exited the range. So now we have a new range of these lows here to that high. So my bias, honestly, last week was bearish into this one because I figured the daily was up to an internal draw on liquidity and the only daily gap was here. Now it hit the weekly gap, which is also an internal draw, and that was enough. So after it hit the internal gap for the weekly, that was enough obviously for the market to go to the external draw. So I did take a loss, and this is last week on Wednesday due to that factor, but yeah, so I switched my bias to long and we got some wins on the Thursday and Friday. Anyway, tracking back to this week, we were at the absolute, we exited the range once again this was my draw for the week, was this high. Okay, now reason being, once again, internal on the weekly gap to external high. So that was my draw for Monday for the week in general, which got hit on Monday. So from Monday, I figured, hey, we are at external high here. So I'm like, okay, the draw's got to be internal because we still have not hit a daily fair value gap all month. So my draw turned its attention down to here to take out these lows, or as just the first point of interest to re-enter this weekly gap. That was my draw after Monday. Okay, so Monday was a bank holiday. However, I did take a trade during London session. As I said, that was my draw. Sorry, I'll redraw that out. That was my draw. So for Monday, it was honestly really nice. Like the way the market moved on Monday was honestly really nice. So we had this 4-hour massive bullish gap here, which you can clearly see it's going to internal to external, back to internal. So now draw is this external high, which is relatively equal with our other external high. So that was my draw for Monday. Now we've already hit the 4-hour internal. So the 4-hour chart's ready to go to the external. And on the 1-hour time frame, if we go to Monday, so I was looking for it to tap. That's right. This bullish 1 hour. So the 4-hour had already tapped the internal draw. And Asia was coming down. So I wanted a reversal from this 1-hour gap right here. And once London sessions start, as we can see, we tapped it perfectly. So at London, I was like, look, we've hit the internal draw for the 1 hour in Asia already. Like, I expected London to hit that. So I was like, look, London's really looking just like a continuation up to the external high. So from 2 a.m. is like when I like to start trading. And we came down and tapped this 1 hour gap right here. So I'm going to take our attention to here. I think this is where I took the long, and it tapped the 15-minute gap as well. So We've tapped the 15-minute internal, the 1 hour internal. This is looking good. We're going with order flow. We're not going against the order flow. So then I'll turn attention to 5. Once we tapped the 15-minute and the 1 hour, for my model personally, I need a 5-minute to agree with everything. Now what I mean by that is I need the 5-minute order flow to be bullish in this instance. So we violated, if we take the last 5-minute dealing range, which is this low, as we took this low here to that high, below equilibrium, this is an order block. So on tapping the 1 hour and 15-minute, that's the incorrect order flow for the 5-minute chart. So me personally, I need this 5-minute gap to get violated. Okay, right there. So that's what I was waiting for. And obviously we got it. So now we have 5-minute back to bullish order flow. We have the 15-minute internal to external. We have the 1 hour internal to external, 4 hour internal to external, all bullish to the external high of the week. So we have a ton of stuff going for us here. So now I'm going to take our attention to the 1-minute chart. Okay. So once we had the violation, this is where I took the setup. So my model, we've got the 1, the 15, the 5. So once we've got the 5, now we drop down to 1 minute and we need a dealing range. 1 minute dealing range. That's what we trade within. Now what is a 1 minute dealing range to me? An intermediate low to high. Or intermediate high to low, depending if you're bearish or bullish. We're bullish, so we want an intermediate low to high. What is an intermediate low? An intermediate low is a swing high or low with a swing high or low to the left and the right of it. So this would be an example of an intermediate low, because we have a swing low to the left, swing low to the right. That's an intermediate low. Now, another intermediate low or high is a swing low or high that taps a fair value gap. So this right here tapped into this fair value gap. That's an intermediate high. Those are the only two factors. So this low right here did not tap a fair value gap, or it also does not have a swing low to the left or the right of it. This is an insignificant low. That's what I call it. So I don't really care about that low. That does not go. So for example, we took an intermediate high over here. If we took that low, doesn't matter. Still good range for me because it's not an intermediate low. So it's a little complicated, but that's my model. So we've had the 5-minute close up around here. So we have an intermediate low taken over here to that intermediate high taken there. So we have a great 1 minute dealing range. And I don't know if you noticed on the 5-minute chart, we also had a bullish gap, which it came into. This was a good setup, man. Perfect setup. So coming into our dealing range, we have no risk of a negative range. So when I trade, I do not want a negative dealing range going into these 5-minute gaps, 15-minute gaps. So let's say, for example, this was an intermediate low. Let's say, for example, the range was this big. Let's say this low came all the way down to here. And this was an intermediate low. If there's an intermediate low above equilibrium, and we take an intermediate high, I want what's within equilibrium. So for it to come to equilibrium, it has to take this intermediate low, which is what? A negative dealing range. I don't want that. So that's why this trade was perfectly safe. There's no intermediate lows at all. So the risk is extremely low. So I took this trade once it tapped the 5-minute gap. Can't remember exactly where it was somewhere around here. Now where I place my stop, I have to cover everything so I don't get stopped out, and then it goes off without me. So for me, 70% retracement is the biggest retracements I usually see. This only did a 50% retracement. So this is my 70% level. So I want to cover 70%, but I also want to take into account different factors. So you got this inverse gap here. I want to cover that, which means stop would go there. However, there's a bullish gap here, so I want to cover that. Stop would go here. However, there's an order block here, so I want to cover that. So when I get below 70%, I'm like, okay, that's cool. But I'm pretty sure I put my stop below this one just to cover absolutely everything. Because we're in Asia session and London session, it's a bank holiday. You got to take these things into consideration. So if it came all the way down here, I'd still allow for it, as long as it doesn't violate the 5 minute. As soon as we violate that 5 minute bullish gap, I don't want in. But with my model, I'm pretty much just trusting it's going to hold up, which it ended up doing. So I'm pretty sure I put my stop out there, and I targeted that high that I was talking about. Now that looks like a 10-1. Now I did not get a 10-1, right? Because it was a bank holiday, I was a little bit skeptical with TPs and all that. So I'm pretty sure what I did is I just trailed my stop to my conditions. So like I said, I don't want negative range. So I kept trailing my stop. So we took intermediate high here. So where's the intermediate low here? So I would have trailed my stop to this low. Cool. And then we go, keep following. This high, there's no intermediate lows. Take these highs here. Are these an intermediate low? No, it's not tapping a gap. None of these intermediate lows. So I'm pretty sure my stop was there. And then we took this high. This is an intermediate low, so I put my stop there. And then again, take these intermediate high here. This is an intermediate low, so I put my stop there. And I'm pretty sure that's where I got stopped out. It ended up hitting TP, but like way later. But I ended up taking it. I think it was like around here. Now I took a bunch of partials. Yeah, it was about there. I took a bunch of partials on the way, and I only risked literally $100. Like I risked barely anything. I wish I risked more. But the reason I didn't risk a lot is because 1, it's a London session. I'm a bit new to getting into London session. 2, it's a bank holiday. So, I don't have the most experience trading a bank holiday. And yeah, so those are my reasons I didn't risk a lot. But it was a really good trade. And like I said, we ended up getting stopped out here, and I took partials up here. So it ended up being like $280. So it wasn't really a 4-to-1 in terms of profit, but I'm not focused too much on making money right now. I am focused on quality trades, sticking to rules, proving to myself I can be consistent in draw and consistent in following my rules. That's what I wanted for myself. So the past 3 weeks, we've had 3 green weeks now. Actually, I'm not going to count this week as a green week. It was a break-even week, let's be real. But the last 2 weeks were green. And I feel like I've proven to myself I can be consistent in following my rules. Which is great. Wonderful. So once we obviously took all these highs, I was bearish to this gap and also further down. That was my bias. However, for London session, on a London session, yeah, I did take a short in London. I was targeting this gap, I think this 15-minute gap, because we were obviously on the decline. So yeah, and we're going from internal to external. So honestly, I don't really know why was I bearish. I mean, obviously the order flow is bearish, but I think we tapped this gap up here. Yeah, so I was bearish for whatever reason. Internal, external, all that. I'm pretty sure I got in here at the 15-minute tap. So obviously a 15-minute order flow within our reach here. So now we'll take it down to the 5-minute chart. So after we had the 15-minute tap of the market, again, what do I need? I need the violation of the 5-minute, right? So after we tapped that, we have this tiny ass fair value gap right here, 5-minute gap. I don't care if it's small, it's a gap. A gap's a gap. So once we tap the 15-minute, we're still within 15-minute order flow. Boom, we violated the 5-minute gap. Perfect. That's all I need for my confirmation, for my draw to go short, down to that 15-minute gap. So now I'll drop down to the 1. Okay, so 340 we had the... So it would have been 345, that candle would have closed, and we had the violation. So same thing. We have intermediate high to intermediate low. Perfect range. No risk of any highs or intermediate lows getting taken. No risk at all. So obviously we got in around here somewhere. I don't remember. Cover everything with a stop. I would have put it up here or here to cover that gap or something like that. And I entered short somewhere here. I don't know, stop there or there or whatever. And I ended up taking profit at that low. So it was a little 2-to-1. Again, I didn't risk much. I probably should have. But again, London session, and yeah, I'm still getting more confident in my stuff. So this is a really good example of, because obviously my draw was I think it was this low, or it was a 50-minute gap. It was a bit lower though. Now once we took this low, I was like, I think I'm just gonna take it off. I was watching a movie with the missus, and I didn't want to stress about it. So I was like, I'm just gonna take it off. Now, here's a really good example of what I mean by you can still trade with a negative dealing range. Here we have a 5-minute bearish gap, right? So I got out at this low here, but I'll show you why you could have held this trade. So you have the 5-minute gap. So if you wanted to be picky with it, obviously I put my stop here. Sorry, no, I took it off. What am I talking about? You could put your stop here because that creates a negative range. However, we're going into a 5-minute gap. Okay, so if you leave your stop up here at the order block, okay, so if you're trying to enter on a negative range, this is how I handle it. So going into a 5-minute gap, the candle which comes into the gap, okay, the 5-minute candle that comes into the gap, which is this candle here, 410. So this is the start of that candle. The candle that comes into the gap, you must wait for the entirety of that candle to finish. If you see it respect the gap and draw is on your side, you can enter. But you must, it's crucial to wait for that candle which goes into the gap to close. Because I had yesterday, same thing, negative range, but it was going to a bearish 5 and my bias was bearish. So I was like, okay, I'm happy to take it, but I'm going to wait for the 5-minute gap to close. And it ended up violating the gap. So I was like, okay, obviously I'm not going to take this. So yeah, so I could have left my stop up here and sit through this. And, you know, I probably would have lost a little bit because my entry was probably around here somewhere. I would have lost a bit. But if I took partials, maybe I wouldn't have. So yeah. So as soon as you see it, respect it. Or here's a smarter way. Let's say you're in the trade. You're down here. Take a partial. Put your stop to the negative range. You get stopped out. Or put to break even, whatever. You get stopped out. Then, as soon as you see it, respect it, boom, you re-enter. That's a safe re-entry. Okay, because if it did not respect it, then it'd come up to your stop, you'd lose. So it's better to just go break even or the high, you get stopped out, and then look for the re-entry, or you just don't take the trade if it violates it. So as soon as you see this candle close down here at 410, what was the closing price? 650, which is this candle here. So as soon as you see it close below, boom, you can re-enter. Stop above, order block, wherever. And then you get the nice move. So could have held that. So that was the trade I took in London. Okay. New York. Now, New York session every single day this week was straight garbage for me. An ass. Now, one of the number one rules, which I did not stick to this week, 2 days I didn't stick to it. I didn't stick to it on Tuesday or Wednesday. Is only trade according to draw unless I'm convinced otherwise. So New York session on Tuesday, my draw was bearish, like I said. Now I had a very nice long setup form. Okay. So we had the 5-minute gaps violated, right? Which is short. But I wasn't convinced because it was 9:30 opening bell. We had the violator, so we had everything there, right? However, I wasn't convinced because it's 9:30 opening bell, and I think the other reason was 15-minute gap was getting hit, and the order block did get taken. So everything was actually there for the short. But I wasn't convinced because it was 9:30 opening bell. It's very erratic, and it actually ended up failing, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it just came out, took the high. So it failed. So this is what was going through my head at the time. I was like, okay, that setup just failed for the short. That's a perfect setup. 15-minute order flow taken. 5-minute gap taken. 1 minute dealing range. But it just failed. So I was like, okay, well, my bias must be wrong. So once we had this order block taken, so we're back to 5 minute in the correct way. So I took the long. And that was what was going through my head. And obviously it didn't work out. Now I risked way too much on the long. I risked like $300 on the long. Which was again against bias. So anyway, it is what it is. But I should have stuck to draw. And now because of this though, the 9:30 opening bell, short setup failing and then it going short to the bias, 9:30 to 9:45, I'm ignoring from now on. I'm never trading 9:30 opening bell. I'm only allowed to trade after 9:45. That's my rules now. And yeah, we ended up getting obviously the short happening, but there was no chance of entry. It just dumped, like in terms of my model. So that was a losing day because after that, I can't really remember what my draw was or anything like that, or what I was thinking that day. But I didn't take a trade for the rest of the session. And then my bias for Wednesday was actually bullish into this 1 hour gap. So my idea behind it all was we're at external low of the week. So for me, external lows and highs are highs of the day, low of the day, high of the week, low of the week, and then weekly and daily dealing ranges. So we're at the low of the week here. So for the London session, I was looking for a long up into that, up into there, which I don't think ever happened. Yeah, I'll see. If I go from 2, we tap this one order block, so I'm curious if there was anything there. I don't think anything was there for me, so I don't think I took a trade, but have a look. So 2:45, we had the violation and everything. So we had the intermediate high to low. I'm pretty sure the range was massive. Yeah, so intermediate high to low, the range massive. So I want equilibrium, and to get to equilibrium we had to make the opposite range, so that's why I didn't take that trade. And it ended up violating the gaps and all that anyway. And then I think I tried to go long again while I was looking for the long again. There was just nothing there, so I think I just sacked off London. So I didn't take London trade. That's what I love about my model, is it is insanely specific with what you need in terms of 1 minute ranges, 5 minute, everything lining up, everything being nice and perfect. And it helps you avoid choppy conditions, because when it's choppy, my model will not give you a setup to take. And as you see, it was just sideways, just crappy movement. So anyway, then we woke up for New York session on a Wednesday, which again, my bias was that way far away. my bias was this 1 hour gap, external to internal. So from, again, it was just 9:30 dump. So we had the 9:30 dump. I was waiting for this because when this candle opened at 10, there was a potential for a 1 hour gap to be created. So if that got created, I would have gone short from there, but it didn't. It got fully covered. So from that point, I was just looking for the long and just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for the long. And the setup didn't show up for me until the afternoon session. But I do not trade afternoon because I'm in Australia. It's way too late at night to trade afternoon. Obviously, I needed a 5-minute violation. So we didn't have any of that until here. This was so annoying, eh? So these candles, I was just waiting for it. I was just waiting for it to close this so I could take the damn trade, and it never closed it. Not one bullish gap closed it to a T, bro. To a T. Like, it closed perfectly in the gap, which is not a violation. It's got to close over it at least one tick, and it never did. So I couldn't take it. And look at that. It ended up violating the 5. This is what I'm saying. This model is so specific, and it avoids getting clapped. So anyway, at this point I went to bed. And then we had Thursday. So Thursday, I was like, bro, London's 100% going into this 1 hour. Like, it's got it. So that was my draw for London. But there was no chance. No chance, because I like to trade from 2. I was waiting for a 15-minute tap or 5 or anything, but it never happened. It just shot all the way up to the 1 hour gap. So from the 1 hour gap, I was only interested in short. So from New York, I was interested in short. And once again, we had 9:30 dump. So anyway, we had the 9:30 dump. So I was like, that's wonderful. I was still short though. So I was waiting for this 1 hour to get tapped here and to go short from there. Now I think there was definitely a long setup to go for the 15. I didn't take it because I figured we could have gone short from the 1 hour and not worry about the 15. So I didn't take it. Now, once again, I'm short from the 15. And once again, there was no setup until the freaking afternoon session. So I didn't get nothing. However, I'll be completely honest. I lost a trade here. So we had the violation of the 5. Beautiful. That's what we want. Now we need the range. So let's go from 12:30. Okay, so here it was violated. Now this was a very risky trade. We had the intermediate high to low. Now we had an intermediate high here. And right above that intermediate high, there was a tiny 5-minute gap. Right there. So what did I say? When there's an intermediate high, right near a 5-minute gap, you gotta be cautious. But that isn't why this trade lost, I reckon. Because the exact same thing happened and it worked. So I was thinking, what's going on here? When these candles were being painted, so when 12:30 opened, there was a potential of the 15-minute gap. So let's say this candle closed below here, there would have been a 15-minute gap, is what I mean. So when I took this trade, I was thinking, oh, this is risky because the 15-minute gap might try and balance this candle fully. Or, better yet, this 15-minute candle might create a gap and come into that gap, which is right at this stop right there. So, looking back, I don't think I should have taken this trade due to the 15-minute, not the 5, the 15. So, it ended up, well, what I should have done is I should have waited for it to come into it and then just see how it plays out. It ended up coming up, taking me out here, which I lost about 300, which was annoying because I stayed up so late. Like, this would have been at 3 something in the morning, and I had to work the next day. Waited all that time to get stopped out, but it's all good because I learned a lesson. if there's a 15-minute potential, we either wait for it to get, especially if there's an intermediate high. If there was no intermediate high here, I still would have taken it, but there was. So if there's intermediate high and right above that is a potential 15-minute gap, it's a no-go. Anyway, well, I'll take attention to the afternoon. So the afternoon session was absolutely brilliant setup, man. I'll show you this. So we've tapped 15, we've tapped 1 hour, we've tapped 4 hour, internal, external, and we're bearish order flow for 15, right? So the exact same setup formed that I lost on, right? But there was only one difference. I'll tell you why it's the exact same setup. This setup, we had 5-minute violated and a tiny 5-minute gap, an intermediate high there. This one, we have 5-minute gap, violated, tiny 5-minute gap, and intermediate high there. Exact same, right? Intermediate high, intermediate low. So see this intermediate high, the lows there, so that's why it's a good range. The gap didn't get violated till 13:55. So at 1400 right here, sorry, 14. Boom, we've got the violated gap. Now we have an intermediate high, and right above that's 5-minute gap. So that's risky, right? However, this is the only difference I could find with this trade. There was no potential 15-minute. There was no potential 15-minute gap that needed to be painted or anything like that. There was no chance of one. So you could have entered there, but it's still risky because there's a 5-minute. So you could have waited for a 5-minute tap, but even if you did, I'm pretty sure yeah, so tap the 5-minute. This is 100% would get taken out, right? This is a risky trade, like no doubt about it. This is a risky trade for sure. But there's no 15-minute potential, so you could have either waited for it to come into the 5 and then assess there, or just be like, look, I'm trusting the range. We don't want offset range, intermediate low to intermediate high. So I think you could have entered here. Let's just say you did, and target the lows. Man, what a good trade that would have been. 12-1. But unfortunately, I'm not waiting for that session. But yeah, so that was a good setup. Risky, but I think you can take it. So London, what was my bias? Let's have a gaze. So London, I think my bias was a 1 hour gap. So my bias was this gap here for the internal external. Obviously I expect some manipulation. Like London, you gotta expect it to go the opposite way to what you think the overall draw is. So I expected London to go up because my draw is down. So I got this 1 hour gap, that's what I was targeting. And so from 2 AM, we had a really nice setup. So from 2 AM, here, there was a 5-minute. So obviously we're bullish order flow. There's a 5-minute tap right here. This is where I entered. The last intermediate low on this chart is here, right? So that's the range, right? So below equilibrium, there's no intermediate lows within our range. This isn't an intermediate low. It's all the way down here at 70% retracement, plus there's an order block, plus there's a 5-minute gap to hold here, right? So that's very safe, very, very safe trade. So we tap the 5 now, but what about the 15? Or if there's potential in that? Well, there's a 50-minute gap here. My stop was down below this candle, so even if it taps the 15, we're safe. So this was an insanely safe trade. So I entered on the 5-minute, which I think was there. And I believe my stop was there. And I targeted the 1 hour gap. So it was a beautiful 3-1 trade. which I posted on my story. And again, we just followed it with what we needed to follow. So once we took these intermediate high here, right, this became an intermediate lows. There's a swing low to the left and right, so I trailed my stop here. Right, so my stop was there. Then we continued, take intermediate high again, so I trailed my stop to that one, because I don't want negative range, right, unless there's a 5-minute gap. And there was none. There was no 5-minute gaps. So if there's no 5-minute gaps, I definitely don't want a negative range. Like, why make a negative range if there's no gap to go to? So then again, we had intermediate high low, and I think my stop was there. And then this was still a perfectly fine range here, 235, plus there was a gap right here. So we don't want this to get violated. If that got violated, I probably would have taken it off or hold it, because we're still valid range. So, but it goes against the rules, so I probably would have taken it off, but it ended up holding. And then we took intermediate high to low again, so I just put my stop there, and then we ended up taking profit, which was really nice. Ended up going higher, way higher, and then we get to this monstrosity of just terrible price action. So last night there was no trade for me, nothing formed. I was looking for the short, but we never got anything to the bearish thing. So we had this high to low here, like we had all the things violated here, but I don't trade until after 9:45, and after 9:45, we look at that, took the high. So then we needed this order block taken, because we had the high to low here, the 5-minute range, which never happened until here. So that would have been the order block taken, so then I could have taken the short from there, but I don't think there was a valid range, and it was in the afternoon anyway, so I didn't take a trade. It was 5,600, so 50,682. So that was my starting balance for the week. So up 200 for the week, but once we got up on that trade, if I risked more, like if I risked more on that Monday and Tuesday, I probably would have passed, but it doesn't matter. So yeah, and I actually did take another loss. Sorry, I forgot to add this one. After we entered the 1 hour, we had this violated, and I think we had a valid range, which didn't end up working out because we needed a liquidity sweep. So that's a new thing as well. If there's no liquidity sweep, or really, it's not really about that. It's more about the 15-minute needing to be like taking that trade. We're going to a 15-minute gap, plus the 15-minute is still obviously bullish, so it's going against the grain. So you kind of want 15 minutes to be on your side. Like, I notice all my winning trades have all been trending with 15-minute. That's the trade recap, man. That's the trade recap. So, what is my bias for this week? Personally, I'm still bearish. I still think we need to hit a daily fair value gap. So, my bias is here, but at the absolute lowest, the weekly gap. I think this is going to be a turtle soup. We've already hit the 4-hour internal here, so we can go short here. And we have S&T with ES on this high here. And, you know, we're in that 4-hour big bearish one, so Monday I'm looking for a short. Definitely looking for a short. So we have this 15-minute low to high. So I need this low taken. And whatever. So, yeah, man, I'm bearish for next week. So, yeah, man, that's my weekly recap. So, hopefully next week, I'm probably going to risk a little more. Hopefully we can pass next week. That'll be good. But yeah, thanks for watching. And I'll see you next week. I'll be trading every day. So, come join. And, yeah, thanks for watching. Peace out.